Produced from the Cube Studios, this is Strong by Science. In-depth conversations about science-based training, sports performance, and all things health and wellness. Here's your host, Max Schmarzo.
All right, what's up, guys? This is Max Schmarzo here. I am with the one and only Cory Schlesinger. Cory is the director of performance for men's basketball at Stanford University. Good friend of mine, extremely passionate human, and for those of you who don't know, former college basketball hooper. Cory, really happy to have you on today. Thank you for being here.
Nah, man, it's an absolute pleasure. I mean, Max, it's kind of crazy how our relationship has evolved throughout the years. Started with the DM. You know, that's how it usually goes, though. The guy in your T-shirt, man, he's got hair. So I wish I was that guy. Like, I got it down here, but I ain't got it up top. So don't worry, Max. I'm going to make you a T-shirt, and I'm going to send it to you.
Good. If you make a T-shirt, I will wear it until I do a podcast with you again. I want your face on it.
Be careful what the pick might be.
We'll be careful with that. All right. Well, speaking of that, Cory, I mean, before we went on air here, you had a little bit of a story about your beard. And not to say you're only known for the beard, but the beard definitely is a staple in the Schlesinger appearance. Give me a little background for that. I want to hear it, and then we'll dive into some of the science.
Yeah, man. So as far as the beard, I mean, it started at UAB. We were on a Spanish tour. I went overseas, and I did one of those crazy handlebar mustaches, right? I mean, it was gnarly. But being overseas, I just didn't shave, right? I mean, we were there for almost a week and a half, and I just started growing out this stubble, and then people were like, keep it going. And so I kept it going, and we were winning a lot of games, and then we ended up winning a championship. And so it became like the tournament beard, or it became like the season beard. And so I just kept rolling it from there. And yeah, that's kind of where the beard is stated for now. And then when I realized, like, if I cut it, then I almost look like a cancer patient. So I needed to keep it because these blonde eyebrows, man, from 5 feet away, it looks like I'm bald, period. Like I can't grow hair. So yeah, that's where the beard states is at this point.
Well, it's fitting. I'm getting mine going. I'm not going to get to your caliber. I keep it trimmed, but it makes me feel like I'm a scientist or something if I have a beard, and makes me more intelligent. But
you got to know
that. Getting on the topic here, when it comes to developing anybody, people say, "Oh, athletes." Athletes are what, 0.001% of the population. When it comes to developing anybody at all, we got to talk about the base aspects of human movement, human development. You have an interesting take on this, and I don't want to spoil it for the listeners. I'd rather have you say it first because I'll just bastardize it and screw it up.
No, you're good.
What is your take on developing anybody, regardless if they're an athlete or just general population?
Right. I mean, if you look through human evolution, what are the things that we used to do, right? We used to farm. We used to kill things with our hands. We used to climb. You know, we used to throw things. You know, I mean, look at the early Olympics, right? I mean, that's basically what the events was. You wrestled someone, you ran faster than someone, you ran further than someone, and you threw some things, right? And basically that's what human capacity is. So my goal before we actually train them to be better athletes is to make them better humans first, because if I can express their ability to be a better human, then they will be able to express their ability to be a better athlete.
Gotcha. And with those movement selections, if you have a unique choice, people who don't follow you on Instagram better, we can give out your Instagram handle at the end.
All right.
But the selections of exercises you pick, it's not traditional in the sense, let's load a bar up, let's do a hang clean. You really take ownership of different shaped objects, put it that way, whether it be a yoke, whether it be a kettlebell. How do you come up with some of those movement selections? What goes into that decision making? And for any individual out there, whether they are a basketball player who's 7'1" or a guy who's 5'8", how do you decide which of those implements are best fitted for you?
Well, everything that's shaped the way I believe is 110% based off my environment. And look, I played college basketball. Don't look at my stats. I was not that good. But I trained or I played with, and now for 10 years I've trained that basketball athletic population. So you can imagine with me, okay, I'm 5'10", very average at best, especially with my wingspan. Now imagine 6'6", but a 7'2" wingspan. And all those things that I was good at, clean, snatch, jerk, I was a purist in the beginning. I mean, of course I was, right? I was just learning what strength is, how to be strong. But now I'm trying to imagine further, like, how do I have his impact? How do I have quote unquote transfer when I'm trying to load these freaks? I mean, these guys are not normal human beings, right? They got 7'2" wingspans and short torsos, so their levers are crazy. So now I'm asking them to do the same things that got me strong, being at 5'10". It just doesn't make much sense to me. Now, not saying they don't have the capacity to do it. I mean, hell, be honest with you, some of my best weightlifters have actually been 7 foot tall. But with that being said, if there's a way I can load them that makes a lot more sense, that's easy to teach, I can do it often, and it's right in their comfort zone. Now, not comfort as in like we're not training hard, but like in their center of mass where they can actually manipulate loads, heavy loads at that, with decent speeds, then yeah, I'm going to do that. So for instance, we look at a barbell, clean, snatches, all good. Why can't we do the same intent with a trap bar? I mean, we could still pull, we could still triple extend, and then we can still catch in that power position. The only thing that changes is the complexity of the movement. Now I'm not manipulating myself around a straight barbell. It's in my center of mass, and now I can express quote unquote force a lot more efficient and effective. So now I can load it more, load it faster, and do less teaching. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. That makes a lot more sense. So that's really what it came from. And then, to be honest with you, like, how do you experience that? Like, how do you know what 7 foot feels like? How do you know? And so, I've dabbled down some ways to open up my consciousness, if you will, to allow me to feel that, or to allow the imagination, my creativity to try to understand what that could feel like. And then, of course, obviously feedback from my athletes. But I mean, that's why you always see like the old school dudes who are just like, oh, we bench, we squat, we box squat, we do whatever to get strong. But it's like, man, it makes sense if you're 5'6". It doesn't make much sense if you're 7 foot tall. So you got to truly find ways to experience it yourself. And now, by the means that you do that, probably not going to talk about on this podcast, but the way I did it worked.
Gotcha. Well, we'll refrain from diving into that specific.
I'd appreciate that.
And I guess to each his own. But one of the things you mentioned, like, we're talking about hoopers. I play basketball. I'm the best 3-point shooter anyone's listening to, by the way. When my feet are set, I'm not an athlete, but I can shoot the shit out of the basketball. I'll be very blunt with you.
I've been on the receiving end of that, and one of our one-on-one games. We don't have to talk about it. You busted my ass.
when it comes down to it, like, a lot of basketball players are bad movers, and what I mean by that, they're very good when you put a ball in their hands. This is something you've talked about too. But when you get them in a dance room, right, they're a lot different than football players. And what I mean by that is you don't see a bad end zone celebration, right? A lot of touchdown dances look really good. Odell Beckham being very smooth. And a lot of it's because those patterns are done without a ball in their hand. This is my opinion. And they're very primal and natural. But the minute in basketball, everything's done with a ball in their hand. And then when they start to move, especially because they're developing this, AAU starts, like in 3rd grade now, they have to only play basketball.
Right.
And typically you don't play football and basketball, especially football at a high level, because, you're prepping for the basketball season itself.
You gotta get that D1 scholarship, bro.
Yeah, you have to play basketball for every waking hour for the next 15 years to get there. No, I'm kidding. But what I'm thinking about in my head is we're not exposed to those different movement patterns. We're stuck in this 90-foot, I'm not sure how wide it is, like 46 feet, something like that, with court that really constrains how we move. And then you put someone in a weight room where all of a sudden they're dealing with external loads and very unique movement patterns. You get guys who just look wonky. And I think you talked about this on a different podcast, but I want to get into a little bit here. I think some of that stems from our coaching of young athletes and our physical education that we no longer, I guess, have what we used to have back in the day, and how that's really affecting athletes as they get older.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I, I get these quote unquote specialized athletes, and to be honest with you, I don't have athletes. Like I have guys who have a basketball in their hand, they got really long levers, and they have some skill, right? They have some skill to be able to go from point A to point B and put an orange round ball into a cylinder. That's so happened to be 10 foot off the ground. But that's what I have. I don't have a true athlete who can pick things up off the floor, who can sit down on the floor and stand up, who can throw things, who can sprint, who can jump onto things. I mean, some of the best vertical jumps that you see in basketball are not even close to what you would see in football and track and field. And you think this is a sport with the high flyers, counter movement jump, hands on hips, averages that I've seen on teams, 18 inches. And everybody's like, oh, God, that's terrible. But that's a true counter movement jump with long levers. So now if we add some momentum to that and add a 7'2" wingspan, and then all of a sudden their elbows above the rim, right? So that's the difference. We see this unreal or this false thought or this false vision of what athleticism is because they are so long. But in reality, I mean, if you put a bunch of cornerbacks out there, that would be really special to see because these are guys that are like 5'10" and the most explosive, fast dudes you've ever seen. They just don't have the skill to play basketball. So, with the way our physical education is set up now, obviously it's been chopped in half and half and half. So no more education. Physical education is what we can get to. They only play one sport. They sit in chairs that they're not really made to be. They live in this Western society where every chair that they sit in is at this 90, which for them is more like this, right? And then they get up and down on these beds that their feet are hanging off of. So I don't know what sleep looks like for that. And if you saw my guys get on an airplane, a commercial airplane, you would be cringing the entire time because they're literally bundled up like this. And so not only are we trying to correct childhood development, I'm trying to correct what they deal with on a daily basis, just walking to class. I mean, watching my guys duck through door frames constantly. And these are like some of them are guards and they're ducking through frames, and you're just like, I don't know how you made it this far without knocking yourself out. So there's so many that it's really all about the environment. And so when I train my athletes, it's all about giving them the environment they've never had. So that's why we utilize the wrestling room, the gymnastics room. It's soft pads, so they don't necessarily fear the ground. They don't fear their interactions with gravity. So now I'm giving them the ability to learn how to change levels. Little guys. That's why you don't see 6'10" guys wrestling, right? So when you give them the opportunity, now they learn how to interact and change levels. And then even more so, you put somebody with them. So now we're like pushing and pulling, just like you see in football. So now they know where to put their feet. So now we're not stepping on feet constantly. Like, I mean, God, hey, these guys are in like size 16, 17 shoes. Like, of course they're going to step on each other's feet. But if they have that awareness and that sense of where other people are, then maybe they don't make that misstep, or maybe they get themselves out of harm's way. And then even more so, just learning how to fall. They learn how to fall properly from standing to floor transitions. Then when they jump through the air at 42-inch verts, whatever you see on Instagram.
Make believe 42-inch verticals.
Yeah, I'm like, word. And then they get hit in the air, and now they got to figure out the most effective way not to break their neck. Well, most of the guys are going to do everything they can to stay on their feet. Well, that's where you're going to get blown out knees, right? So now if I can give them a tumbling strategy, so now that they can interact with the floor a lot more smooth or athletic, well, then maybe they have a chance to not A, get hurt, and B, be back in the action, right? So it's performance enhancing as well as injury mitigation.
No, I mean, I don't know where to begin. I got about 9 comments off of that. First off, I love the idea of talking about how these guys are living in a world built for someone 5'10".
Right.
I'm 6'2", and Kelsey, my girlfriend, goes, "Hey, can you reach above and grab the top can of pasta or whatever?" And I'm like, yeah, okay. But you look at a guy until you actually play hoops, I think, and really
Mhm.
appreciate how big these dudes are. You play against a guy who's 7'1", you look at him and go, oh my gosh, like that's a different human. And
Right.
then you look at his shoe size next to you and you shake his hand and you don't get to the other side of his hand. You start to understand, like, who are we dealing with here?
Right.
And you look at
Mhm.
these, the body needs to heal when it goes into a stress or whatever. And we're putting these guys in positions that the body would not otherwise deem uh, for recovery, right? They're like in this, you call timeout. This is the funniest thing, NBA timeouts. Aside from LeBron James, that's got the 9-foot chair, right? These guys come out in these little stools that are too small for me, and their
So they're
knees are at
not
their
really
chest.
resting.
And you got a dude who's trying to recover his heart rate, but really the whole time he's in a hip flexion he's never been in the past, 30 years.
Right.
And
Right.
if we're thinking about really taking care of an athlete, well, we spend so much time in the weight room and all this great stuff, but we can do so much more if we had the liberty to. I use we usually more like you, to then develop an environment that's conducive to them. I know University of Kentucky did that, right? If you look at their dorm rooms, they had a ESPN thing on 2 years ago when they built out the new facility for the basketball players. The sinks were higher, the
Mhm.
beds were higher, they were longer. And if you ever watch a guy who's 7 foot drink out of a water fountain, I mean, the amount of spinal flexion he has to go under is
Right.
ridiculous. The guy's curling up in a C. And
Right.
I mean, that's crazy to think about because the whole time in the weight room, what you're talking about is like, how do we get these guys in a position that they can function successfully in, right? Not necessarily optimally, because optimally would have been something we did 15 years ago to get them in a position,
Right.
but how can we get them to be successful? So I'm going to pose a question to you, Corey. I'm going to give you the keys to the castle, the kingdom. If you
Okay.
develop um, maybe not the whole environment, but there's three things you'd like to change that are outside of the weight room that you had the crystal ball and you could go either back in time
Mm.
or you could adjust socially. Okay, I want to change this guy's, the size of his car, the chair he sits in. What are three things that you'd pick and do?
Number one, I would get them involved in dance or martial arts as their first sport. That would be probably number one. So, or gymnastics. Something, I don't care how tall you are. Like, who cares if you're not trying to win a gold medal at 3, right? It's just learning how to do those things, right? Understanding your body. Number two, I would change how physical education is in Western society. And then number three, let's give you something actual physical. Number three, if I could make,
I got something for you. What are you thinking? I
okay.
got, I got you while you think you're third. For me, basketball players eat horribly.
Well,
Like
yeah. So is
they
football
don't
players.
eat.
Too. Yeah.
But like basketball players, at least my team, and I don't want to make this universal blanket statement, they
Uh,
just don't like to eat for some reason.
right. I see what
They'll hoop for 3 hours and drink a Gatorade and call it good.
you're saying.
Um, I
Well,
don't get it. Like I was a fat ass when I played. I gained weight in season because we had all these team meals and no one ate food. I take home the Chipotle. There's post game meals, and that's when they removed the snack rule. Remember the snack rule when
no,
you
you had
take home
Chipotle.
leftovers?
I had Taco Bell, bro. Like, if we won, we got Taco Bell. If we lost, it was McDonald's. So, like, that's the level I played at, which we suck.
I got a real story for you. I'm gonna go a little tangent. I apologize. We were gonna go play, and this is D3 hoops at its finest. We're rolling to a game. It's up north. It's like a 4-hour drive, and we stop at the rib crib, an hour and a half before we take the court. An
Ooh, let's go.
all-you-can-eat buffet of ribs. So you got a bunch of Iowa boys here at the rib crib. They bring out platters. We're basically, incapacitated and win the game by like 5 points because our center had to pull out to throw up at halftime. Like,
Let me ask you this: did you ever have to drive the team van? Because I had to do
no,
that. I
but we had guys sitting in the back seat who were in the bags.
who thought that was like level? Once again, the level I played at, unreal. But I would say that the third thing, don't get me wrong, yes, food, but if there's a way, I mean, if there's a truly economical way across the board to just look at gut health, we could do that. Don't care. But I can change your environment, if I can change your internal environment, and the number one is if I can just poof your gut and I can look at everything, then that would be the number one. Because
Food tests,
yes, you can put all
seriously.
the food in the world, but I don't know how you're absorbing it. I don't know what's going on. And then you want to talk about these kids that, ADHD, or these kids that are super restless. Well, I think it starts with the gut, because if your gut health sucks, so does this. So that would be the third thing.
No, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of experience with our company. I don't deal with the actual reading of it, but things I've learned and seen, and the idea of taking that integrative approach. So, hey, let's actually look at your stomach. Yes, you have to collect your poop 3 times a day, and I'm sorry if you're going to do that. But you can start to look at what you're producing and what you're excreting, and whether or not you're absorbing what you need to absorb. And we start looking at injuries and tendon health and muscle tissue and everything as a holistic approach. Well, we got to look at the internal environment, right? Our environment's messed up inside, and we're trying to impose a stressor on the body, but we have no idea what the internal system's like. And you have certain deficiencies or certain aspects that you're lacking. And these are
Mm.
certain areas where again, people go, oh, that's not scientific. There's no study. Well, unfortunately, if you understand complex systems and their dynamic interactions, and not to get too detailed, I'll
Right.
explain it as simple as I can. Right. What happens is we have an outcome, like a sprained ankle, and we say, oh, ankle weak, ankle get hurt.
Right.
Well, kind of, right?
Right.
Well, maybe it's ankle weak. That's a risk factor. Athlete didn't sleep enough for the past 3 nights. Risk factor. Athlete had some sort of physical contact during the game that perturbed their system. Risk
Mhm.
factor. Athlete nutritionally wasn't recovering from previous workouts and games. Risk factors. So what happens, you have all these risk factors, and that's just a very those are not all the risk factors. There's a lot involved, but these risk factors come about, and then we have the probabilistic nature of something to happen. So, oh, how likely is it that something bad will go wrong? And we see the last straw on the camel's back, sprained ankle, and we go,
Right.
oh, ankle weak. But maybe it's didn't sleep enough, ankle weak, all this other stuff. And that ankle sprain, for people interested in complex systems, it's called an emergent pattern. So there's a common pattern that occurs when you have things go wrong. So if you think about an ACL, it's like, oh, glute medius is weak, knee valgus, um,
Right.
neuromuscular control, all these things that go into it, and nothing can pinpoint it. So if we are including these biomechanical factors of knee valgus, why aren't we including some internal factors like gut health, or the blood work, or the micronutrient deficiencies? And yes, I know I'm not versed enough to speak on micronutrient deficiencies and their interactions of health and whatnot, but something as simple as collagen and vitamins, having adequate vitamin C for tendon healing instead of repair, is
Right.
obviously a factor. And so when we start looking at the body, we got to look at it as a big picture. And it's not just how your knee bends, it's not how you shoot a jump shot, and it's not how you land every time.
Or
There
our
are
body.
things, yeah, it's our
Yeah.
body.
Our body is so much more resilient and durable than we give it credit for. I mean, we've survived as a species for a very long time through very harsh conditions. And you're going to tell me it's that one jump that got you? Like,
One jump got you.
one jump is the one that, oh, that knee's a little valgus. That's the one that got you. I mean, if you super slow mo a lot of these great expressions of physical capacity in sport, you'd be like, oh my God, their knee, they're this, they're that. But in reality, like that's not even close to the reason why they like break or don't break. And Jordan Shallow, brilliant dude. He gave me this metaphor. He was saying to fill up a pond, it's like this fungus that will fill up a pond and it doubles its size every day. So if it starts off at like a, zero point 0.2, then the next day it'd be zero point 0.4. And he asked me, he's like, okay, if it's going to fill up in 30 days to fill up the whole pond, what's the day it's half full? And then I thought for a second, and it took me a lot longer than I should have thought about it. But he interjects and he goes, day 29.
I didn't want to
And
answer, by the way.
yeah, I was like, day 29. I was like, that's how I look at the human body. Like, yeah,
Yes.
it's literally the last thing, and then boom. And so it's all these we could have had all these interventions from day 2 to day 28 or day 29 even. But no, it's that one just last um, straw on the camel's back to just, there it goes, and that's what's great about being in a collegiate setting and being at Stanford is we have a lot of safety nets for our safety nets, if you will. So we try to have as many quote unquote KPIs and objective measurements to give us an idea of what could possibly happen. But in reality, it's still a dynamic environment. So I don't understand, like, I can't account for school. I can't account for their sleep. I mean, we could through like Whoop or Aura or whatever, but it's not realistic in a team in our setting. And their gut health, like we ain't picking up poop 3 times a day, right? We're not drawing blood once a week. We're not doing these things. So unless we're doing that, then you're just trying to create the most resilient, durable human being so they can withstand the stressors, some more than others, to hopefully have a successful season.
No, that's like, I hate to break it to people. We don't know what we're doing. Like, we're doing our best.
Yeah.
And I think Chase, when I was with him at Stanford, he had a great line. He said, "We can't guarantee success, but we can almost guarantee you're not guaranteed to fail." And what I mean by that is that you can have all these KPIs, and really we're looking at, if you jump 9 inches, you're probably not going to be, very good at basketball unless you're 7'2",
Right.
right? And so we're looking at the human system as a means of understanding, what is going to really lag behind in regards to your performance assessment and what might be hindering you. In regards to longitudinal tracking, can I get a little bit of data a lot? The way I explain it is kind of like, I don't ask my girlfriend Kelsey how she's doing once a week. I ask her every day. And why I ask that every day is to realize, oh, are my clothes that are left out pissing her off? Or,
Right.
did I forget that we're supposed to go on a date last night? I might or not have forgot a wallet last night when we went to dinner.
Right.
Only on accident I was supposed to buy, but that's a true story.
I mean,
But
well,
the
like
idea is,
you brought up, I mean, that's the most important thing is you got to have feedback daily, right? And the
Mhm.
way we do it here, it's really simple. We take a controlled environment, do some things in it before they go into a dynamic environment, which is basketball games or basketball practice. So what we do is we call that microdosing. It's our way of training every day in some form or fashion. These individuals come in, do their work, their human capacity, A series, if you will. Then after that, they go into their B series, which is complex. This is really what I know what's going on. Now, don't get me wrong. When they walk in, they get their weights. Are we joking? Are we making eye contact? Do we get that handshake? How firm is that handshake? These are all the quantitative things that I'm trying to pick up as they're coming through the door. Then you watch them say we're hitting a clean complex and they're going through their motions and they're constantly changing their grip or the pull isn't looking too good. Like it's like, man, it ain't that sharp today. Well, boom, that's my control. Now, it's not the most objective feedback, but at least it's a constant. And so that's my way of having, once again, safety nets for my safety nets. And then weekly, or depending on how many games we have that week, we do our force plate jumps. So once again, another safety net. And then we have our Connexon data, so our GPS data that they do on the practice gym. Once again, any one of those in isolation doesn't tell me much. But if I have a bunch of them, then I can at least paint a better picture from quantitative to qualitative, and then I can go and nitpick what I think their intervention may need to be. And so it's not going to be perfect, not even close. But as long as you have a constant, and yours is beautiful, like you said, just something simple that you get daily. Hey, how are you doing? And you know how they express that. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm cool. I'm great. Like what those influxes are. Like what how they're truly feeling just based off that one question alone. But once again, if you can set up your system or your program or whatever to have safety nets for your safety nets, then I think you can catch a lot of those along the way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's, how do we provide context to a situation, right? And the more information that we can apply that we deem classifiable to a system, like jumping is, your lower body strength, and your
Right.
verbal expression is your most emotional state, and maybe even sleep or other things that go into that, the more we can understand what's actually happening to the person. So I want to kind of reel you back for a second. You said something about microdosing, and in
Yeah.
terms microdosing, you're referring to training a little bit often.
Yep.
That's
Training
the
a little bit
simplest
all
way
the
I'm gonna
time.
put it. And Corey's well known for this. And for those at home listening, I'm gonna do my best to explain it shortly because I got a question off of it. So
Yeah.
he explains it. We'll sit here for an hour and a half because it's great to listen to. But I want to give him a little bit of a different direction off of athletics about it. But firstly, microdosing is the idea that we're applying a moderate level to low level stressor consistently. And that adaptation occurs from the aggregation of those stresses over a period of time. So we're never going too high, we're never going too low. And the idea is that training in the weight room is only one small piece of your life. So if you have a programmed high day and you don't sleep that night, or you have emotional stress, or for your case, you have practice, then all of a sudden that high day gets magnified and starts spilling over the bucket and becomes too much. So the idea of microdosing, especially in a non-controlled external environment where it's called life, right? We're trying to apply enough that you can handle. And if someone's feeling good, then they can push it a little bit that day themselves. Now, my question for you, Corey, is I love it in an athletic sense, but I also see it being very applicable to anyone out there, general population, um,
Absolutely.
especially in terms of, and I got two things on this. In terms of one, someone learning a movement, you get a chance to do it often and daily, and
Mhm.
someone who wants to learn how to be in the weight room. And secondly, because there are, let's say we do it 8 out of 10 days, right? If you only miss one day, you're only missing 10% of your entire workout,
Yeah.
right? So instead of looking at this whole one workout one day, you look at like a 10-day period. If you got 8 days to pick from and you just can't do one, you only miss 10%. Versus if you only had 5 days to pick one and you missed one, you've missed 20%, right? And so now we have the ability to be more flexible in our environment. So how does that fit in for like a general population? If it was my dad or my girlfriend trying to learn how to use some of this microdosing in the weight room concept, how do you
Mhm.
apply that?
So 100% with microdosing, the reason why it came about was it was a solution to a problem, right? My problem is I don't have enough exposure to my guys. So how do I create more training frequency? And now we got rid of warm-ups, something that was just kind of getting them ready for practice. They kind of don't care about it. The coach hated seeing me do it. I personally hated doing it. So now it was a solution. What it turned into was motor learning. Now, you want to learn how to train? Well, do it all the time. So that's where complex comes in. Istvan Euvoric's work, right? So basically, you take a barbell and you do every movement that you would do in a weight room in some sense in one set. So you hinge, you do a hip flexion, you do a press, you do a pull. If I break down each one of those into isolation, it would look like RDLs, squat, push, military press, or row. Those are all movements that you would do. And if you separated each exercise in an isolation, you would go more resistance on, just like you would see in general fitness, right? Like we're going to do 3 sets of 10 on bench press or 3 sets of 10 on back squat. Well, that's great. How about we just put it all in one and now we have more exposure? So now I'm learning how to do the movements. And then you can't tell me that doing one thing once a week is actually going to make you learn the movement. So now you learn those little small idiosyncrasies that you see with 30-year experienced powerlifters who truly understand, like, ooh, from my body, this foot stance, or this is how I start to hinge here within my squat at X degree. And that's how they perfect it, is because they have so much exposure to it. So we're doing the same thing. We're just trying to create exposure at lower thresholds and then doing it often. Now, as far as general population, what's the number one concern? Uh, I don't have enough time. Oh, really? You don't have 30 minutes a day, 20 to 30 minutes a day to knock out a workout every day? I call BS. I say you just don't want to train. So that's where microdosing to me is beautiful in the general population, is because it's literally the way you start your day, it's lunch, or it's when you get off work. Perfect. You can pick any of those three slots, 20 to 30 minutes. You can eat and shower and get back to work or before work. So you can't tell me that everybody doesn't have that situation. So now we're creating training frequency. You're getting enough volume throughout the week. Now we have And then most importantly, like you brought up, if I just had to miss that one day, it's 10% of my training. Like it's not, well, I only train twice a week, so 50% of my training is gone. So that's where I think it's beautiful. And that's where it could work from general population to the most elite athletes in the world. And the reason why I say the most elite athletes in the world is because I just so happen to train two of them. So I do it with all these populations.
No, that makes total sense. You got me thinking a little bit. If you see some of this right now going on in general fitness, and it's these like 36-minute classes. Well, Fit 36 is awesome. They're a good group. I know one of their trainers there, and they do a really good job of it.
Mhm.
But it's the concept of maybe not such um, high intensity aspects that you're doing, but you're promoting motor patterns, right? So it's not like, okay, let's train for 36 minutes generally, or let's train for 45 minutes, or let's train for an hour, but let's have a specific program that we're picking on to develop an athlete and push them in a direction. And so what I mean by that is I kind of see this is my attempt to digest Cory's mind, break it down, and bear with me. I
Not
feel
good
like
for
when you see a 7-day period and
Mhm.
you say, okay, in this period, I want to accomplish, uh, 5 sets of total or 5 sets of 10 reps in back squat. And then your microdosing mind, like you slice it up. And so all of a sudden it doesn't become a 5 by 10, right? Because 50 total reps you're trying to get. You won't
Mhm.
take that like 10 reps here and 20 reps here and maybe 5 reps here and you put it in different ways. So if you look at it holistically, it's this very on the certain when you first see it, it looks almost I don't say disorganized, but it looks like a lot happening at once. But when you
Mhm.
take a step back and you look at it a full chunk, the full pie is there.
Right.
And so I think for people, if they come in and see one of your workouts or they see it on Instagram, they go, "Oh, it's just Cory doing, you know, appears to be basic patterns that kind of seem random." But really, you said, "Okay, this is my goal. This is what I want from these guys." And you've taken a step back, you've applied it in a very strategic way, so it's not just people say, "Oh, it's like a fitness class." No, like first off, microdosing doesn't just specify like a 30-minute workout. It's a 30-minute directed workout with a tangible, I guess, a quantifiable goal over an aggregated period of time. Is that a
Right.
fair assessment? I dove into the brain of Cory for a
Yeah.
second.
I mean,
My too.
I look at it like this. Look at let's look at another population. Let's
Okay,
look at prisoners. When they go to the yard, how much time do they have a day? Right?
I got no idea.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not a lot. Like, they're locked up in a cell for the whole day. So when they go to the yard, they go ham on whatever's available. It ain't like they just got this nice little whole, like, okay, we're going to do front squats, and then we're going to go do bench, and then we're going to do our
Overall,
curves, and then we're going to do, no, they pick something that is available and they go ham on it for an hour. And they're on really terrible food in really terrible environments, but tend to get really fucking strong. Okay, well, that makes sense. So, and you know what? They do it again the next day and the next day and the next day. So I'm not saying we're training like prisoners, but what I'm saying is there's a reason why if I was to tell any elite level lifter, okay, all you can do today for 30 minutes is squat, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to go heavy often and they're going to be able to be fresh the next day to do the same thing. I mean, no one leaves a powerlifting meet the next day saying, "Oh, time to go train again." No, their body is trashed, right? Because of all the intensity that they did through multiple movements. Same idea, right? All I'm doing is isolating it. So, for instance, I'm looking for a specific response. If I want to train relative strength, I'm going to find a movement that they can move a lot of weight, obviously not through a high speed, and that's the movement we're going to do. If I want a absolute velocity, for instance, if we're talking Tendo terms, I want them to be very elastic and reactive. I want them to move very, very fast. Then I'm going to pick a movement, say like a barbell squat jump, maybe it's a kettlebell swing, maybe it's throws, and then they're going to go ham on that. But if you just take that one isolated lift, I don't care if you do 10 doubles at it, you're not going to be that sore, especially if you've been doing this for over a year. When we first start the preseason, we got to look at stress holistically. The biggest stress they have is basketball. So the last thing I'm going to do is beat them down in here. I'm just going to make sure the wheels stay on the cart. So you look at our total volume, it looks something like 4 sets of 4. But by the time we're at the end of the season, January, February, March, we're hitting our PRs. And the reason why we're hitting our PRs is because we've made this huge reservoir of stress that they're able to handle. So now practice is cut in half. So I have more reserves in the weight room. So that 4 sets of 4 we were hitting for those compound movements in preseason, well, now they look like 10 sets of doubles or 12 sets of singles because they have that reservoir. So now we're expressing in a controlled environment faster weights, heavier weights at the time of year that we're looking for those adaptations. So that now we're quote unquote stronger and faster when we're trying to win a championship, not trying to win it in the summer, which you generally see. Like everybody sent PRs before they go home in the summer. Well, that's great. And then they go into their maintenance program for the season, which lasts 6 months. Can you maintain anything for longer than 6 months? No, you can't. Like maybe your oil, but you're not going to be able to maintain adaptations. You know what I'm saying? So, that's where it really came down to is I'm trying to find the best means to produce performance.
So I'm going
And
to
I'm
take one
still
more
with
stab.
it. Yeah,
One more
go ahead.
stab at this, Cory.
Please
I'm
do.
trying to wrap my mind around it so I get it correct.
No
When
worries.
you
I'm
look
getting
at it,
started. All right.
personally, it's looking at how do we give a workout that fits the current state and need of the athlete. So, okay, if they're beginning the year, right, their capacity is only so low because of all these outside stressors. So you're fitting the workout around the other 23 hours.
Right.
And then you're applying a stressor that's heavy enough, but not too light. And
Right.
you do it enough to not overly fatigue them, but to at least stimulate them.
Right.
So you're working with guide rails, not a written in stone type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go
So
ahead.
how basically how I how I keep the base probably the best way to put it is what I've done this year that I haven't done in the past is abuse tendo units. Like that's my way of just monitoring. How about speed? Okay, cool. Because load is one thing, but once again, how do you move that load? Now we're not dicing it up like, oh, it's zero point 0.7. You're supposed to hit 0.5, like, well, add 30 kilos or vice versa, right? Like you're not exact. But if you're within a range, it gives me a whole lot of details, right? And then and basically all we do from that point is record the weight, not the speed. I just keep them in a certain zone. Stay within this. For instance, our strength speed or our relative strength and strength speed movements can't go anything more than triples. Our speed strength and our absolute velocity, you can't go anything over 5 reps. If you hit, quote unquote, those triples or those 5s, then the next time you come in, guess what? We get to upload. If you're not above that, we're just going to stick with the same load. And then if you prove it within your early work sets, then we'll add a little bit of load. But that's our way of day to day keeping them on the road, if you will.
No, that makes sense, dude. I couldn't agree more. Like I see it carrying over so well universally. Right. When you look at the origins of strength training and we're like, oh, it came from Russia, and even Yuri Verkhoshansky, for those people who aren't nerds like myself, the Russian sports scientist, even said like,
Right.
oh, periodization is kind of a made up thing.
It's
It's
100% made up.
kind of made up, and it kind of came from the 4-year cycle of Russia itself. And
Right.
then America takes it. And then what happens is you get into the non-athlete world, kind of gen public world, everything gets monetized.
Right.
Right. So it's like, okay, we know that training really heavy every day isn't probably a good thing. So we're going to make these things called, these small little workouts that might last 25 minutes or an hour, 6-minute abs. Let's shrink it as low as we possibly can.
Right.
And then let's make it not necessarily difficult, but challenging, and a way to make money off it. So we label it something different. And
Right.
you see different fitness fads come up and come and go, but a lot of it's because, again, the capitalistic market of monetization and people trying to make money off of things.
Mhm.
But that really does stem from like the athletic side. If you're thinking about, hey, I'm Cory, I'm dealing with athletes. I don't know how they're going to walk into my door today. I don't know if they're going to be high, low, or just normal. how can I then give myself the opportunity to provide an environment where they can work successfully in? And what you do, which is really cool, and I find it really not inspiring, it's kind of a cheesy word, but you give a lot of ownership to all your athletes when it comes to selection of exercises and movements.
Yeah.
And I find that to be something that we don't, and I say we as in the general world of anything sports science and fitness,
Hmm.
don't always like to do. Um, and you say, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, too. I don't want to take words out of your mouth and say them incorrectly. You say, here's a pattern, and maybe select one of these three exercises that you feel like gets you ready. And what's so great about that, it removes the constraints of this exercise is the best, this is the golden exercise. And
Hmm.
really, it's like, I mean, you and I know it, but we want to feel good. We just hit some bench press when I came in town. Like,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
it's like, okay, let's really understand that, there's not really a difference between a back squat versus a front squat versus maybe something of a trap bar pull, especially if we're using it to get the athlete ready. So talk, if you could, talk a little bit about how you decide some of that and what led you down that path to giving those athletes that kind of ownership and understanding of, I want to do this versus I have to do this.
Right. I mean, to me, autonomy is everything because what you generally see, and it's to me, it's almost criminal, is everyone gets their piece of paper, they fill it out, they leave. Now you're good. Then you do the same thing, right? You get that piece of paper the next day and then you fill it out. You get that piece of paper the next day and you fill it out. And then 4 years later, you go, well, I'm leaving now. Where's my piece of paper for the rest of my life? And you're like, oh, so you didn't really learn how to train, did you? You didn't really learn what worked for you. You didn't really, and the real issue is like I deal with crazy different levers. I mean, I got guys that are 5'8" all the way to 7 foot. So you can't tell me there's a golden exercise. It doesn't exist in my world. Like, don't get me wrong. I would love to have everybody do the exact same thing. They love doing it and they all do it very, very well. So that I can have my little lab and I can have my control and I can show, hey guys, look how much better we got this year because of my implementation of back squats. Like, what does that say? That says that I care more about what I'm doing more than what's best for that athlete and what they're doing. If you really, the real reason why I got to this autonomy stage is when I realized what I do is such a small percentage of their overall success. And the reason why I say that, I'm not necessarily saying I agree with HIT or disagree with HIT, but you could have a HIT program, you could have an Olympic based program, you could have your holistic based program, whatever you want to say. And I see the HIT program win a national championship, and I'm like, well, what happened? Like, I don't agree with that program, but they won. Well, it's all about the dudes. So if I can give quote unquote my dudes the best training environment that works for them. So what I mean by that is, look, here's a squat. You hate doing back squats because the bar on your back is jerking the hell out of your shoulders because you don't like to be in external rotation. Well, then maybe I'm just going to hate. How about this bar, a safety squat bar? Does that feel better? Cool. Corey, my knees are super tender. Oh, wait, it's basketball. Everybody's knees at some point in the season are going to get super tender. The last thing I'm going to do is put them in an environment to flame up those tendons so that they can't perform at a higher level on the basketball court. So what are we going to do? Well, let's hinge. How about we just do some RDLs today? How about we do some kettlebell swings, maybe some trap bar deadlift? It doesn't necessarily have to be this golden exercise that everybody fits in. And I think really what it stems from is that strength coaches got to prove to their sport coaches that, well, look at our numbers go up. And they have to have a control to do that. And the exact opposite. It's the sport coaches coming down saying, what do our guys bench? Well, if our sport coaches care so much about bench press, well, then what do you think I got to do? Well, I got to bench my guys so we can get those numbers so I can look like, I'm validating my job. Well, how about we take something that's universally accepted? So how about a counter movement jump on a force plate? Now, I'm not saying everybody has force plates, but you can just use jump height, for instance. Who cares how you got there? As long as you are trending right, that's all that matters. Why should we be fixated to a certain methodology or a certain pattern, or not pattern, but exercise? Just give them a pattern, let them choose, And to be honest with you, if it feels right, it's going to fly right. If it feels good to do a trap bar squat opposed to doing a front squat, well, they're probably going to put more load. And if they put more load, then I'm going to get the stress response adaptation. If I don't like the front squat because it's choking me the hell out, well, then I'm probably not going to put as much load on it. Now I have a negative connotation. Now I have all these internal stressors going on. And then I'm going to have a weird ass look at you saying, I don't like what we're doing in here. So now you think the quote unquote buy in is going to be there. So now we're not getting any stresses that are going to give me that positive adaptation I'm looking for. So at the end of the day, if I can give them the education to learn how to do these movements and how to choose for themselves, well, then now it's not just what they did here for 4 years. I just gave them skills for the rest of their life. And if they're good enough to play pros, now they can take that and they can articulate it to their next coaching staff so they can do a better job.
No, that's that's awesome, man. Like, there's a lot of things I want to dive into there. I'll keep it. I'll dive in all 900. I promise. But I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that you say is, let's have a KPI. They say jump height, for example, a point of reference. Then let's not care what we do to the extent, I don't mean not care, but let's not constrain ourselves in what we do in order to improve that KPI. So the way I think about it, it's kind of like, you ever use Waze before? That
Yeah,
GPS app?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It knows two things. It knows where you are.
Yeah.
It knows where you were if you're driving. It knows where you're going.
Right.
And then it says, okay, all I care about is getting to point B.
Right.
So it will take you on detours left and right if little old granny is driving slow in front of you, there's a pothole, if whatever. It's going to
Right.
find the best way to get there. It doesn't care how it gets there.
Right.
Right. And so with that, it's say, okay, let's set this environment where we can learn and we know we need to get to B. We're at A. And I'm not going to say go in a straight line because you might go through a building and crash and hit a pedestrian.
Right.
We're going to find a way to get to B, but we're going to find a way that makes sense for the athlete and yourself.
Right.
So by teaching them, let's have you like and learn to do some of these movements, then they'll know taking a left at this next stoplight to get to point B would be quicker than you saying go straight because they're the one in the driver's seat.
Right.
And it's that educational environment where you start to look at this is a really complex system. How can I take a really simple A-B model and apply it to something as complex as the human body so that we can learn? And the example I give is like, like the ways pot, like the more complexity and assumptions we make,
Mhm.
the more room for error we have.
Right.
If we assume this and we assume that and we assume it'll get us here, well, if we assume in order to get to A to B, we got to A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. At
Mhm.
any point along the line that assumption breaks, we don't get to B, right? You stuck at A whatever,
Right.
and instead of doing we have to follow this waterfall method. It's very much a living method where things come in, things come out, things make you change, but you know where you want to go.
I mean, it's we work in team sports. Like the only objective the only objective that matters is wins and losses. Period. Right. So if I was in a stopwatch sport, maybe my mind would change a little bit. Right. Maybe I'd be like, okay, we need to drift towards this because literally it's did you get faster? Did you not get faster? Right. Swimming, whatever you're doing. Maybe these are the things that we need to do more often to make that happen. But I'm dealing with incompetent, I mean, great human beings, but just physically incompetent. They're still learning about their bodies, they're still growing into their bodies. I think it's the most arrogant thing that a strength coach can do is to say, here's a program that's going to get you better for 6 weeks. What the, like, what is that even? Here's a block that's going to get you to point B. How do you know? Like, are you Nostradamus? Like, can you honestly tell me that following this 6 week plan is doing that? Like, they got sport practice, they got exams, they got pickup. You're telling me none of those factors could potentially throw off your little plan? or that your little plan could fuck up their KPIs, if you will, or their goal is just to play basketball. So that to me, that's where I was just thinking it's like the most arrogant thing in our field, and it just drives me up the wall. But at the end of the day, like I got a sport coach who has all the faith in the world in me, gives me the keys to the castle, and he just tells me do what you think is best. I I report the numbers that he doesn't even know he needs. That's what's awesome about it. He's like, Corey, I just trust you. Like these are the things that I want to see my guys do. We want to quote unquote play fast. Well, okay, here's some standards that we can set. And these are ways that we know we got quote unquote faster. Now, from the technical tactical aspect, that's where you guys come in and you guys got to apply what you think is best to make that happen, right? But I gave you the physical requirements. I told you exactly what you needed to get done and how we got there. Now you guys apply the technical tactical aspect, and then there we go. Now we have a happy marriage. As long as I can supply valuable information, it doesn't matter what the information is. And that's where everybody gets stuck on these controlled environment numbers like fucking squatting and benching. It's like who cares? Like who cares about load? Load gets you to here, right? After that, it's all about speed, it's all about rhythm, coordination, your vestibular system. Like there's so many things that go into making you better, not just put 315 on my back squat. Sweet. You know?
That's, yes. Yes. I agree. And I'm not going to deviate too far. My mind, you know how I work, Corey. My mind races and I don't go in straight lines. I apologize.
No,
Uh,
me neither. We're good.
One thing I was thinking about, you kind of mentioned this earlier, was I've been thinking about this lately too, is people who've been in the private sector. So I worked in personal training and I worked in an exercise clinic for 2.5 years at Iowa State where we dealt with older adults. We ran a lot of cool testing on them, but ultimately they showed up because they enjoyed it. And one of the things that I think I don't mean we as everybody, some people forget is that it needs to be enjoyable. Um,
Fact.
and when you're in a private sector and you're literally your food is the ability for someone to come back to you, right? Like, it's really different. And
Right.
you start to say, okay, what exercise and movement do you like? And then you manipulate how do I make that exercise the most effective exercise for that person? And that's what you kind of mentioned with the educational process for your athletes. You're taking this approach where how do I get them to, firstly, they got to want to be here, right? If they don't want to be here, they're not going to try hard. And then secondly, now let's have them take ownership of these movements. I really like that concept because it's really melding the world of, hey, you're here, you have to get better. But everyone knows when you want to get better versus have to get better,
Right.
right? The outcome is a little different, and
Absolutely.
people are excited to lift and excited to move. Um, I just keep thinking about that from like, okay, the private side, that's really where like the general public and you can deal with great athletes, you deal with a lot of athletes who really want to be there, but unfortunately, the majority of the world doesn't want to work out. Like they're they're not interested, and I hate to make an assumption, but it's hard not to think that it's either them not knowing or them intimidated that they have to do something in there.
Right.
Right. I like that mindset of being able to apply, okay, let's have an ownership model that drives it. Because if you talk to people who are successful personal trainers, they have a way to make sure people come back
Oh, for
and
sure.
enjoy the process in a way that a strength coach at your environment might not even have to be exposed to just because
Mhm.
it's the nature of the beast.
Well, for me, like the off season, I mean, when I get a freshman, like that's a great thing about basketball. When I get a freshman, I mean, maybe they picked up some weights, like maybe, like they're still just such a greenhorn in the weight room. They don't know what's good and what's bad, right? So essentially, the off season is a little bit of dictatorship. Like, hey, sorry, I'm gonna tell you what to do because you don't know shit, right? But the goal is to earn that autonomy as well, right? So my guys that are kind of like slaps, like for the whole off season, well, their leash is a lot tighter. Like, nah, bro, you're going to do this because I know you need to do this. You haven't earned the right to have that autonomy. So I want to make sure that that's like pretty clear too, because if you just give autonomy all day, then they're just going to run over you. But the one aspect that I think that is so important with our autonomy is it's my biggest performance enhancer. And I actually have data to prove it. Like if I just look at my CMJ numbers from our force plates, once again, yes, there are some maybe 8 sets of doubles or 6 sets of triples or whatever, right? But once again, that is tendo based, like to a certain degree with most of our movements. So, it could be a triple, it could be a double, it could be a single. Like it depends on where they fall along those lines. But essentially, the flexibility of the sets and reps, the unbelievable latitude of the movement pattern that they're doing, but yet counter movement jumps in February, they are PRing, not season PRs. I'm talking lifetime PRs. Guys that have been here for 3 years are hitting from 19.1 to 26.4. I can't say names, but 26.4 in February. So what does that say? It says that my biggest performance enhancer is the kid saying, I want to do that. Cool. That's what we're going to do.
No, I love it. That's exact perfect. If you want to be there, your intent's going to be high. You're going to try harder. You're going to actually care about what you do. And that mindset really helps drive an aspect of performance that otherwise we can't because it's all internal.
Right.
So Cory, we're going to start to wrap it up towards the end here, but I got a couple of questions for you before you go. First off, thank you for being on. I appreciate it.
Pleasure, homie.
It's always good. We'll have you on next week. No. Get on a weekly cycle of Cory on.
We'll microdose
Cory. By fireside, I'll turn slowly. Oh, thanks for having you guys weekly. Come on in. Come with us. Cory Schlesinger, tell you a little bit about science and sports.
I love it.
No, but I mean, if you had to share a bit of advice, and this is to anybody, and this isn't necessarily a coach, anybody at all looking to enhance their fitness, their performance, their overall well-being, because you can do that with activity.
Right.
What would you advise someone to get into in regards to training, or how should someone initiate that? So you talk about the microdosing. I'm kind of giving that a bunch of credit here, obviously, because I love that concept. How would someone introduce microdosing, put it that way, into? I'll get straight to the point. Someone looking to get into exercise probably should do some form of microdosing to see if they even like it. If they want to microdose, how do they start that process? And if they're not an athlete per se, how do they decide where they begin?
Well, essentially is, where do you want to end up? Like what's the point be on ways, right? Do you just want to look aesthetically better? How aesthetically do you want to look? Do you want to look like a big bodybuilder? Do you want to look like a swimmer? Like, what do you want to look like? And I think that the vanity in it, I mean, that's what drives my basketball players. They're in tank tops year round. Of course they want nice arms, right? So there's certain things that you got to know, like, I want to look like this. Now, some of the performance guys, maybe I want to sprint faster or jump higher. Like, that's a whole nother aspect. But we're talking about general population. Well, number one, what do you want to look like? Okay. So if I'm 300 pounds and I want to lose some body fat for my own general health, and I want to, be more presentable, if you will, in smaller clothing, well, then maybe just walking 10 minutes every day. And then you start adding layers to it. So, okay, you know what? I've been killing these walks. How about we go Stairmaster? Okay, that's a little tougher. Okay, how about we introduce maybe some med ball exercises, because that's not necessarily too complex to do, but I can do it through different ranges. It's easy to manipulate. Okay, now let's take a dumbbell or a kettlebell, and then we work our way to a barbell. And now, oh man, what do you know? I just dropped 100 pounds. And then, before all of that, eating, but like, we're just talking about the physical aspects. But as far as that, where do you want to be? Okay, I want to look like Brad Pitt. Okay, for one, get plastic surgery. But if you want to look at Brad Pitt in Fight Club, okay, well, these are the things that I need to do. So let's reverse engineer the process. Okay, he's a little jacked, so that means he's got muscular strength. Okay, cool. So that means weights are going to get involved at some point. Well, he got really lean for this too. So my general fitness sucks. Maybe I just need to start with walking, maybe a jump rope, maybe just some medicine ball tosses, something that's super easy. But number one, what's going to make me more consistent? What consistency is going to win it? It's not the workout you do that's going to make you go from a counter movement jump to 19.1 to 26.4. It's the consistency that got you there, right? I mean, that was a 2-year process for that kid just to get to that point, right? If you try to hijack the system, if you try to go, well, I want to get from point A to point Z like that, well, you're going to run into multiple things. One, possibly injury. And then two, what's the real reason why you're rushing? The real reason why you're rushing is because you don't want to be there in the first place. So now you just ruined the whole concept. Now you just ruined the journey. To me, that is much more important. Like when I used to be a fake bodybuilder, if you will, like when I try to get ready for shows, I don't remember the show at all. The only thing I remembered was those nights where I was damn hungry, those mornings where I had to get up, do my quote unquote fasted cardio, meal prep. That's what I remember. The only thing, hell, I was on stage for 45 seconds. Like that was 12 weeks for 45 seconds, right? So that's where you got to understand, like, it's the beauty, or what is it, that J. Cole line? The beauty is in the, oh gosh. Basically, what the thing that you're going to fall in love with the most is the adversity. The thing that you're going to fall in love with the most is the stressful points. That's what's going to create the beauty, if you will. Damn, I wish I remember that J. Cole line. But essentially,
We
that's
can pull it up on a Google search really quick for you. Impressed with the Brad Pitt Fight Club collection.
I mean, that dude was solid, man. That was a solid cat. I mean, like Brad Pitt, he was a pretty boy until Fight Club, and I was like, yo, that is some white trash that I would not mess with. He can go.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Lastly,
Yeah.
Cory Schlesinger, where do we find you on social media and other venues outside of social media? Where can we hear more from the bearded wonder himself?
Yeah. So Instagram is probably what you can find me on the most. It's /strength, SCHLES strength. You can find me there. I'm pretty active on it. You want to see some naked cats? So I own 2 Sphinx with my beautiful wife, and multiple podcasts. I'm on a lot of different podcasts. That you just Google iTunes or go into iTunes, type in my name. You'll find many other platforms where I go into a lot more depth about how we train. And then, of course, speaking engagements. I do multiple speaking engagements a year, nationally and internationally, and so there's opportunities to meet me in person there.
There's beauty in the struggle.
There's beauty in the struggle. There's beauty.
I got it mic'd in.
Yes. There's beauty in the struggle. That's what
I
it
can't
is.
take credit. That's Brendan Ratter right there for you.
Man,
Thank you
good
for being
luck.
back in the studio.
Good looks. But there's beauty in the struggle.
Awesome. Well, Cory, I appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah,
I mean, I hope we talked about something useful.
absolutely.
It was wonderful.
It was 100% my pleasure, Max. I love working with you, man.
No, you're the dude. And anybody curious about Cory, I mean, I really encourage you checking out his social media. He posts a lot of crazy stuff on Instagram that is really thought provoking, put it that way. And I can't believe it. Oh my goodness. I can't let you escape, Cory, quite yet.
Whoa, what you got?
Hold off the exit. Give me 5 minutes on it.
All right.
Everyone's gonna ask. You go on his social media. You're gonna ask.
Yeah.
The rehab of the Achilles itself.
Yeah.
From standard to spring-loaded monster.
Man.
How do we? I mean, do you want to share a little bit on this? Because I know you have been doing this yourself.
Yeah.
This is strictly Cory Schlesinger based Achilles program. I love some of the exercise. I love the unloaded foot contact. I'm doing a hand motion here. No one's seen it if you listen to this. Basically, Cory's in a chair and he's, for lack of better words, smacking his foot on the floor like a pogo stick and doing extremely, extremely unloaded movements early on. I'm not saying too early on, but in the rehab process itself to introduce low-level plyometrics. He's doing band-assisted jumps. He's doing isometrics. He's doing heavy squats. He's doing some barbell curls. All things important for the Achilles.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah, to be honest with you, my understandings of the lower leg complex is off the charts because of my injury. So for the viewers, I tore my Achilles, or I ruptured my Achilles tendon. Well, not full rupture, but right at the insertion, which is a very atypical tear because I've been dealing with tendinosis for over a year before I tore it. So they had to cut me up top to bring me down low, if you will. So usually Achilles ruptures, all they do is bring it together and then tie it through, right, or sew it through. But mine was at the very bottom. So essentially they had to cut me up top to lengthen me and then sutures through. So it was very atypical, which sucks. Like that part sucks. But um, it's not that I am, well, maybe a little bit arrogant, but I honestly wanted to take full control of my physical therapy because I think that intuitively I understand the process, not just of rehab, but of how to increase performance. So all I did was water down as much of that as possible and then truly started as soon as I got to pain free. And so, yeah, with all the unloaded stuff, it just made sense to me. Like that's something you just don't see in physical therapy too, which kind of blows my mind is what's the first thing to go? Like when you get older, what happens? Well, you lose your ability to do very forceful things or to lose power or the ability to generate power. So that's the first thing that came to my mind when I ruptured or when I tore my Achilles was, okay, I need to go back and not be old because essentially I'm staying still. So if I'm staying still, it's like use it or lose it protocol. So from that perspective, I told myself I need to move fast at some point. So I started with all my available limbs at the time, just moving fast. Then I progressed to when my suture seal, or excuse me, when my wound healed, I got into the pool. So that's as about as unloaded as you can get. And all I did was just frail my leg in there as much as I could through different planes. And of course, yeah, it swelled up, but of course it's going to. Like you're adding a stress. And so I just did it more, more, and more. And so I just kept training fast, even though it was the most unloaded way you can do it. And then, like Max was talking about, I got to a seated position and I just started doing the most unloaded pogo jumps you've ever seen, or ankle pops, or whatever you want to call it. So then I transitioned to standing on it, isometrics, then putting more force into the forefoot, isometrics. And then I started using the bands. I mean, super heavy bands. And then I just started light pogos and then started lightening the bands as I went. So I went to body weight. To me, it's like super common sense, but I don't know, maybe the physical therapy world doesn't really look at it that way. They look at it in isolation opposed to global. So to me, I knew if I could quickly get back to global patterns, that I will be able to promote healing faster. And so, like Chase talked about in his last one, all the BFR protocols. Luckily, I had him as a resource to help me with my healing process. But right now, I'm at 4.5 months, almost 5 months, and I'm doing some pretty cool things. If just to give you a point of reference, Des Bryant, wide receiver, he tore his a week after mine, and essentially
Similar guys,
he's not. What's up?
similar athletes.
Similar athlete, very similar. But essentially, he's going to be up until 8 to 9 months. John Wall tore his a few months after mine. He's going to be an entire year for his process. Uh, Boog, Golden State Warriors, took him a whole year to get back going. My goal, if I can get it back in less than 7 months, that means I did something right.
No, I love it. Well, that's the type of stuff you get to see if you check out his Instagram page. So
Me,
please do yourself a service. Go check out the man. He's a good dude too.
I try.
So sometimes, no, I'm kidding. He's
Yeah,
always.
you're right there. You're right.
I don't want to call Cory on a bad day. No, it's all good. No, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for being on here. And again, we'll follow up sometime in the near future. I feel it. I'm expecting that shirt, by the way. Where's my Cory Big Head t-shirt?
You know what? I'm gonna find one of my earlier bodybuilding pics, and I'm gonna put it on a T-shirt and send it to you.
I would love it. I would rock the hell out of it, man.
No beard and a
It,
mohawk.
it'd be right here,
Yes, sir.
right behind me. It'd be in my poster. It'd be Cory Schlesinger posing bronze and golden.
You're welcome.
Oh, you're swolcome, man. You're absolutely huge in that.
Purple banana hammock too. All right.
Wouldn't ask for any other way. I want the full real deal. Cory, stage ready.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, all right, man. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. Great to have Cory on. If you're curious about finding more, check him out on his Instagram, and look forward to doing more of these in the near future. Awesome.
Thanks, Max.